No, I'm just here looking. Not my circus, not my monkeys. I don't want any of the tasks from this committee or my latest one. No, I'm just the secretary. I am staying very neutral on these issues. Just writing things down as neutrally as possible. Which gets difficult when there are sometimes three conversations happening at once.
You being the secretary.
Yeah.
Yeah, somebody said to me, well, do I put everything in here or just one sentence that says we discussed this?
Yeah. How much of our conductor's souls do I?
Yeah.
When do we start taking those again?
I know, I used to always volunteer to be secretary, and now I don't anymore.
I can even read my own writing, so it makes it hard.
It's on a laptop.
Yeah, now you don't have to fix
No,
it.
I don't have that problem.
Yeah, it's just the problem with Deutsche. People really need to record.
Yeah.
Well, they're coming in.
Yeah.
Filter in.
Hi.
Hello again.
How are you?
How are you?
Sort of, anyway.
Watching it.
It is.
Well, I'm going to sit over here so I'm not, because I
Enjoy Med's time.
I did.
Which I was cool, wasn't it?
It really was. It really was. What do you see from a tour study?
Oh, did you? Nice to meet you.
Oh. Oh.
Some of them were cool.
It is. So we left early and.
come to regularly just for this.
Okay, okay. I don't even know if this was it.
Yeah. Outside. You know, obviously, the gyms and stuff, they all over the place, particularly the last one, you know.
We should,
Relating to my.
actually, I'm gonna pull a chair for us. Do you want the armless chair with the guitar?
Yeah.
Because we should use the mic for the live stream, if
Okay,
nothing else,
okay.
you know?
Our circle is growing.
Good morning. Good morning.
Anyway, it's a great,
So instead of having a tour table, we just
you know. Okay. Some people say, oh, I have a hard time feeling for us. And it's not, you know, of course, we deny it, but I have social retirement, so they'll say, well, this is happening. I also,
Yeah, I
didn't say that. The only thing is I didn't get her. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Alex is ready.
You can go to the center of the circle. It could be all about you.
Are you gonna help us out? Because we could use some other singers.
We do need to.
And arc openers. Oh my gosh. I forgot it's on here.
I just want to introduce myself. I'm Sandy Lewis. I'm
Sorry, yeah.
the synagogue president.
Hi, Sandy. It's so good to meet you, Madam President.
I wouldn't go that far.
I'm so honored to be here. I really am.
We are so honored to have you, and we obviously we love to be touched. This is Alexander.
Hi, Alexander. Alexander, who did you like better, the monkey or the elephant? Yeah. Okay.
Oh, elephant.
Or Team Elephant.
Let's go find out Mama and Mom. You're gonna see us, sir.
hold something for you? Do you want a music stand? Or do you want this?
Maybe the little thing just on my tablet.
Yes, basically. Once you've had triplets, you know. That's good.
Perfect. I feel like the Dalai Lama.
You are now. Here, you can move on. The world is a circle. You just had talked about Well, good morning and Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat Shalom.
So good to be together. As you know, we have this very special guest, Cantor Evan Kent, who is leading us all weekend in different, we're really working him.
Yeah.
He was here with the the Rugrats this morning, telling stories and singing songs, and now he's with us older Rugrats.
Thank you for giving us chairs this morning.
I was going to suggest we get rid of the chairs.
It's such a loaded, fraught time for all of us. We need to be together, and so we're grateful that all of you have taken the time to join this community for this time of meditation and song and reflection. Thanks for being here.
We begin with a simple nigun that goes like this. Ya ba bim bam, ya ba bim bam, ya ba bim bam, ya ba ba ya ba ba ya ba bim bam, ya ba bim bam, ya ba ya ba bam. One more time. Ya ba is my syllable of choice. If you'd like to use a different syllable, that's totally okay. La la la, lu lu lu. I come from a family, a long line of yabba-babas, so. Ya, ya-ba-bim-bam, ya-ba-ba-bim-bam, ya-ba-bim-bam, ya-ba-ba, ya-ba-ba-ba, ya-ba-bim-bam, ya-ba-ba-bim-bam, ya-ba-ba, ya-ba-ba-ba-bam, ya-ba-bim-bam. Ya-ba-ba-bim-bam, ya-ba-bim-bam, ya-ba-ba, ya-ba-ba-ba, ya-ba-bim-bam, ya-ba-ba-bim-bam, ya-ba-ba, ya-ba-ba-ba-bam. One more time. Ya-ba-bim-bam, ya-ba-ba-bim-bam, ya-ba-bim-bam, ya-ba-ba, ya-ba-ba-ba. Ya-ba-bim-bam, ya-ba-ba-bim-bam, ya-ba-ba-ba, ya-ba-ba-ba-bam. So I'm here as a guest of this congregation, and over the past few years, I have not only a cantor, but my husband and I, we moved to Israel in July. It'll be 13 years. We lived in Jerusalem for 9 years and recently relocated to Tel Aviv. And in the process, I have not only, I am still a cantor. Actually, my husband and I, we are the cantor and rabbi for a very small congregation in Milan, Italy. I know, it's very difficult. It's a tough gig, but I can't. We're once a month, we're on Zoom, and you can join us. And then once a month, we're in person in Italy, in Milan. And it is a small congregation, about 50 families, a third native Italians, a third Jews by choice, and a third are expatriates. And congregations all have their own stuff, and 50 families have a lot of stuff. And of course, typical of the Jewish community anywhere in the world, because Italy has only between 20 and 40,000 Jews. The Reform congregation in Milan decided to split. So we're Beth Shalom, which we also could have been Beth Tikva, or so Rodef Shalom. But so there are two. We actually the other congregation follows a more they believe that they are actually doing sort of more Italian Nusach, but they're not, because I've gone to their services, but we won't tell them that. And our service mirrors sort of it's because of the large concentration of expats, sort of American service. Just a bit about sort of what we're going to be doing today is that my academic background, I have a doctorate in music education from Boston University, and I spend most of my research is in narrative and autoethnography. And as a storyteller, those sort of fit all together. So what I'm really interested in is our stories, our story, the story we're going to read today, but our personal stories, who we are, where we came from. And I'm especially interested in something, this sounds like, I should take out like my PowerPoint lecture, but I'm not going to. It's what we call it in either in narrative or autoethnography or even ethnography, we call it critical event theory, which means what are the events, what is the event in your life that helped to put you on the path where you are now? If you chose Judaism as a religion, if you decided to become a rabbi or cantor, if you decided someday you're sitting, you start college and you think you're going to be an English literature major, and the next thing you realize you're studying space and air science. I mean, what are those fulcrum moments that sort of move you from one place to another? And also the other thing that really interests me, because we're in the Torah, the book of the Torah. We're in Parshat Bo today, which is the last 3 plagues. Please bring up a chair, we'll make space for you.
We can push back a little, that way we can, yeah? Thank you.
We'll just keep on going.
We'll grow, that's right.
So 2 things we get from our Torah portion is that we're in the book of Shemot, which is the book of names. Shemot means names, and also Parshat Bo, which are the last 3 plagues of Israel, the flood. The last 3 of the 10 plagues before Pharaoh says, "Okay, I've had enough of you. Let's everybody just get out of here." He doesn't actually say it like that, but what I'd like to do is, before we go do anything else, is to recognize that after 484 days in captivity and as being hostages, last night our time, in the morning, Israel time, 3 hostages were released, 3 men. Yardain Bibas, who is his wife, and his 2 little, we know the faces of those 2 little red-headed children very well. Ofer Calderon and Keith Siegel. Keith Siegel is a dual citizen, an American and an Israeli citizen, and his brother Lee speaks at the Havdalah ceremony every Saturday night at Hostage Square in Tel Aviv. So we've gotten to know his story, and we always wondered if he were alive. We had no notice, and he is, and it's quite extraordinary. But we also pray for all of those who are still hostages. We pray for all those innocents, all the children on both sides who have been injured, who have been killed, who have been maimed, and lives who have been upended. And what I ultimately pray for, is that somehow we find leaders on both sides of the border who govern through hope and not through fear. So with that in mind, on page 70, Pitchu li Shari Tzedek. Pitchu li Shari Tzedek, Avov Amodeya. Pitchu li Shari Tzedek, Avov Amodeya. Pitchu li Shari Tzedek, Avov Amodeya. Pitchu li Shari Tzedek, Avov Odeya. Sharei Tzedek Avovam Odeya.
It's very interesting that they translate it as the gates of victory. Sharei Tzedek, it's actually the gates of justice.
But there must be a reason why, there must be a secondary
Yes,
psalmist reason that we don't.
sure.
Yeah.
Sure. But just so that we can read it both ways.
Righteousness.
Right.
We usually say righteousness, right? Just tzedek, tzedek.
Yeah.
On page 78, we come to the prayer that acknowledges that God, the soul that God gives us, is pure, and that we really, every day is a miracle. Just getting out of the bed some days is a miracle. The returning of hostages we would see as a miracle, because after 15 months, I think most of us had very little hope. So I'm going to ask us to sit for a moment, reflecting on the last week, the week to come, and then we will continue with Elohai Neshama. Elohai Neshama Shenatata Bi Tehorahi. 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 Baruch atah Adonai asher beyado nefesh kol chai v'ruach kol basar ish. Blessed are you, Adonai, in whose hand is every living soul, and the breath of all mankind. On page 80, our morning blessings. Our morning blessings, Nisim B'chol Yom, daily miracles. We'll do half of these, have the beginning in Hebrew, then the second half of the prayer in English. But before we chant these, what are some of the daily miracles in your life? What are your daily miracles? Waking up is indeed, I would say waking up and being able to wake up. Okay, well, if you believe in resurrection, then it could be waking up and not alive. Waking up and being able to put my feet on the floor. It's a miracle. Truly is a miracle.
The people in our lives.
People in our lives. Anybody else? My son. Do you want to tell us exactly why?
4 years ago, he was suicidal. He ran away from his mom. Then he came to live with me. And now he's living with the band. And he's off with his IEP and special ed. And getting straight A's
Wow,
in high school.
that's truly a miracle.
He is a miracle.
Mm.
He only has memories of the last 3 years, but so for his entire life, all he can remember is music, Judaism, and good food. That is
In that order, it's like, or
and deity. That is, yes.
Thank you.
wow, thank you for sharing that.
He's seen a lot this miracle.
Absolutely. You're a miracle too.
Mhm.
Any other miracles in our lives?
It's the work we're privileged to do.
For sure. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who has given the mind the ability to distinguish day from night. We move down the page. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who opens the eyes of the blind. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who frees the captive. Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who lifts up the fallen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who stretches the earth over the waters. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who strengthens our steps. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who clothes the naked. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who gives strength to the weary. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who removes sleep from the eyes, slumber from the eyelids. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who made me in the image of God. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who made me free. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who has made me a Jew. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who girds Israel with strength. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who crowns Israel with splendor. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Amen. For many years, I was involved in a program called IJS, the Institute for Jewish Spirituality. Did you guys do it? No. And we had a teacher of Chassidut, of Hasidic teachings, and he said there are certain times in your life, we read, as Jews, basically we read the same service day after day, week after week, the high holidays, year after year. And he said, but there are certain times in your life when the text blinks at you. And when we came to the line, came to two lines today, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who has made me free, and who girds Israel with strength, and who gives strength to the weary, and who redeems the captive, who frees the captive. I couldn't think that those are very, very apropos blessings to say for today. So, Amen. On page 90, Yitka Chatzi Kaddish. Yitkadav, Yitkadav, Shemei Rabbah, B'yom Madiv Rachirutei, B'yom Lich Malchutei, B'chayachonu v'mechonu v'chayedecho Beit Yisrael, B'hagalahu v'zman kariv yimeru, Amen. Yehi Shemei Rabbah mivarach, Le'alav u'lamei hamaya yitbarach, Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitbar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, Yitadav v'yitalev v'yitalal, Shemei dekudesha b'richu, Le'ela min kol berchata v'shirata, Tushbechata v'nechemata, Damiram b'yalma v'yimeru, Amen. Page 100, Hallelujah. A Yemenite melody that goes like this. The refrain goes, Kol ha-nishamata hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Try that with me. Kol ha-nishamata hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Hallelujah, El Bikodsho, Hallelujah, Bikiyahuzo, Hallelujah, Bigvurotav, Hallelujah, Kirov Gudlo. The refrain, Kol Hanshamata, Hallelujah, Hallelujah, Hallelujah. Kol hanshamate hallelujah, 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 betake hashofar, hallelujah, benevel v'chinor, hallelujah, betov umachol, hallelujah, biminim v'hugav, kol hanshamate hallelujah, 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 kol hanshamate hallelujah, 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 b'tziltzale shama, hallelujah, b'tziltzale truah, kol hanashamate hallelujah, 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 kol hanshamate hallelujah, 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 kol hanshamate hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Page 108, Baruch Hu, and we rise. One of the questions that I always ask kids, if I do a number of bar mitzvahs in Israel, and I'll ask kids when we're standing at the Western Wall, I say, well, when you pray anywhere in the world, where do you stand? And they usually say Israel. And then when you're in Israel, where do you pray? And they say Jerusalem. And when they say where you stand when you're in Jerusalem, one kid says to me, he says, you pray to the Mosque of Omar. I said, actually, no, we turn to face the Western Wall. So close, very close, but. Please be seated, and we join together in our prayer Yotzer, or that thanks God for the heavenly beings, for the gravitational pull that keeps us on the earth. And would somebody like to read this at the bottom of page 110 in the Hebrew or the English? Anybody want to volunteer to read that? Oh, don't make me pick on somebody.
Praise are you, Adonai our God, sovereign of the universe, creator of light and darkness, who makes peace and fashions all things. In mercy, you illumine the world with those who live upon it. In your goodness, you daily renew creation. How numerous are your works, Adonai. In wisdom, you form them all, filling the earth with your creatures. Be praised, Adonai our God, for the excellent work of your hands, and for the lights you created. May they glorify you. Shining light upon Zion, that we all may swiftly merit its radiance. Praised are you, Adonai, creator of heavenly light.
Adonai Yoser ha'emorot. You know, the next prayer, we come to Ahavat Olam, Ahava Rabbah, before the Shema, and it is traditional to take the four corners of your talit, the four corners of your tzitzit, and if you don't have a talit, you can...
Would anybody like one?
Would anybody
We
like a
have.
talit?
I'll grab a couple.
And traditionally, the gathering of the corners of the talit represent the gathering of Jews from all around the world, the four corners of the earth, as coming together. But I like to think that the four corners of the talit really represent the four generations present in my life. The first corner is for my great-grandparents and my grandparents. I will tell you tonight in my show Shards that I had a very special relationship with my great-grandmother. My grandmother, my father's mother, was an immigrant. Actually, we refer to her as an immigrant, but they were really refugees from Eastern Europe. And this corner also represents a grandfather. I didn't know I had a grandfather. You'll find out in the I'm giving it away. I shouldn't give it away, but I didn't know I had a grandfather until I was 25 years old. The next generation is really my current generation, my friends, my brother and sister, but also my husband, because we have been together for many, many years, and we are really, at this point, inseparable. The next corner are my students. My father was an educator, and he said to me when I became a cantor, he said, you'll be teaching hundreds and hundreds of students and adults. And he said, the only thing that is eternal is teaching. It is the gift that goes on from generation to generation. And sometimes it's a little scary, because when I'm conducting a choir, I hear my high school choir teacher coming out of my mouth, and it's not necessarily a good thing. but my students, both my students who are, last night one of my bat mitzvah students was here, and she's now, I don't know, I still think I'm 35, and I thought she was 13. That's not true. And then the next child. That's right. And then the next corner are my nieces. We have 5 nieces, and my nieces have become mothers, some of them, and so I not only have nieces, but I have great nieces, and I am also a great uncle. So we hold these all together, and they represent not only the 4 corners of the earth of bringing Jews together, but the 4 generations, or even more, of our lives. And we join together and we recite Shema Yisrael. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed. At this point, we would chant the V'ahavta, but you know the way that Mishkan Tefillah, this prayer book, is laid out, is that we have the Hebrew, and then we have a translation of the Hebrew and transliteration. We're on page 116, 117. And then we have a commentary at the top, and then often on the other side, at the bottom of the left-hand side of the page, is something about that sort of questions the text, that makes us think about the text. And I think maybe today would be appropriate to read at the bottom of 117. If somebody wants to read one paragraph and somebody else take another paragraph. Ida, you want to read the first paragraph?
Sure. If we can hear the words from Sinai, then love will flow from us, and we shall serve all that is holy with all our intellect and all our passion and all our life. Together?
If we can serve all that is holy, we shall, doing all that humans can, to help the rains to flow, the grasses to be green, the grains to be golden like the sun,
and the rivers to be filled with life once more.
All the children of God shall eat, and there will be enough. But if we turn from Sinai's words and serve only what is common and profane, making gods of our own comfort or power, then the holiness of life will contract for us. Our world will grow inhospitable.
Let us therefore lace these words into our passion and our intellect, and bind them as a sign upon our hands and eyes. Let us write them in mezuzot upon our doors, and teach them to our children.
Let us honor the generations that came before us, keeping the promise for those yet to be. In a moment, we will come to Mi Chamocha on page 122. And you know, in the Torah, we're getting close. We're really close. Next week is Bishalach, which is the Song of the Sea, which is just we actually, when we open up Torah, I think maybe we will actually show Bishalach because it's beautiful. But I want to share with you a reading that my friend, my teacher, my colleague, Rabbi Zoe Klein shares with us. She writes, there are 3 regions in each of our souls. There is Egypt, there is the desert, and there is the promised land. Many of us have glimpsed our Egypt, or perhaps some are still there, wearing the chains, bearing the burdens of fear, insecurity, doubt, and weakness, mustering the strength to clamber up. Still fewer of us have glimpsed our promised land, our destiny, our fulfillment of dreams, our fruitfulness, our blossoming, our purpose. We talk of Egypt often. Every holiday, every prayer service mentions we once were slaves, recalls our hardships under Pharaoh. And we talk of the promised land often. Every holiday, every prayer service longs for Israel, for the voice to come forth from Zion. We turn to the east and we reminisce Jerusalem. But rarely do we talk or pray about the desert. Yet that is the region in which most of us are, pushing forward in the wilderness, dragging our footsteps across that 40-year stretch of pristine, barren moonscape. It is in the desert that we encounter truth. It is there we encounter miracle. We are nomads still at the shore of some sparkling oasis, and we sing our nomad song.
Do you want them to have a page? It's page 122, Mi Chamocha, page 122.
Mi Chamocha, Ba'elim Adonai. After me, Noga Tehilot, Osei Velen, Noga Tehilot, Osei Velen, Shira Hadashah. Hatayam Yachad Kulam Hodu Ve'imlichu Ve'amru Ve'amiru Adonai Yimloch Le'olam Ha'ed Adonai Yimloch Le'olam Va'ed. La 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 la. We're going to stand for Tzur Yisrael. But what I'd like you to do as we chant together, as we sing together Tzur Yisrael, is to feel your own power, to feel the strength of your own legs and your feet in the earth, and the power that you gain from yourself, the power that you gain from being in community, the power from your family. So we rise, and just for a moment, feel yourself settling into that place of personal strength with your feet on the ground if you're able. The strength from being here on Shabbat morning, the strength from being here in community, with friends, with family. So Yisrael, Kuma be'ezrat Yisrael, Ufidekinu mecha Yehuda b'Yisrael. Gohaleinu Adonai tzvaot shemo, Kedosh Yisrael, Baruch atah Adonai, Ga'al Yisrael. On page 124, we'll join together for Adonai Sifatai Tivtach, and then the Avot in Gevurot. Adonai Sifatai Tivtach, Ufi Agita Gilatecha. Adonai Sifatai Tivtach, Ufi Agita Gilatecha. Adonai Sifatai Tivtach, Ufi Agita Gilatecha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu, Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagato Hagivor Ha'anotah, El Elyon, Gomer Chasadim Tovim, V'konei Hakol, V'zocher Chasei Avot v'Imahot, U'mevigvonam livnevnehem, Leman Shemo Yahava, Melech Ozer U'Moshiach U'Mageh. Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Olam Bezrat Sarah. Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai, Michayei Hakol atah Rav Hoshia. Mashiv HaRuach U'Mori HaGashem, Mechaper Chayim V'Chesed, Michayei Hakol Rachamim Rabim, Zomech Noflim V'Rofei Cholim, U'Matir Asurim, U'Mekayem Emunato, L'Shenei Afar, Michamocha B'Gevurot, U'Midom Me'emach, Melech Limit U'Mechayeh, U'Matzmiach Yeshua, V'ne'aman atah l'hachayot Yodako, Baruch atah Adonai, Mechayeh HaKol. We continue silently through Modim on page 138. And when you get to Modim Anachnu Lach, I would encourage you to sit down, and then we will have a moment of gratefulness together. But before we get to Modim, let's rejoice in the joy of Shabbat with Yismechu on page 132. Yismechu b'malachutecha, Shomrei, 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 Shabbat v'korei, Onech Shabbat, Yismechu b'malachutecha, Shomrei, 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 Shabbat v'korei, Onech Shabbat. Mekadeshei Shevi Shabbat, Kulam Yisvehu v'yitangu mitshuvecha Shabbat, Yismechu b'malachutecha, Shomrei, 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 Shabbat v'korei, Onech Shabbat, Yismechu b'malachutecha, Shomrei, 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 Shabbat v'korei, Onech Shabbat. V'hashvi ratzita bo v'kiddashto Shabbat, Chemdat shamim oto karata, Zecher l'maseh v'reishit, Yismechu b'malachutecha, Shomrei, 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 Shabbat v'korei, Onech Shabbat, Yismechu b'malachutecha, Shomrei, 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 Shabbat v'korei, Onech Shabbat. Every prayer service, morning, noon, or night, ends with two prayers. A prayer for peace, and then before that, a prayer for thanksgiving. So at this moment, we take a moment for thanksgiving. What are we thankful for? What is the blessings, maybe a little difficult than the miracles in our lives, but what are the blessings in our lives? What are we thankful for? Anybody? We pray.
Amen.
You know, this week while watching the Holocaust Memorial of Auschwitz, I was thinking, about my son and the footsteps when he was in college. He went to Auschwitz, and he was walking my grandfather's footsteps as I was watching him alive doing it. And I thought, really, and with the like 7 years after my grandfather And that I know, I mean, I absolutely know that he will teach it to his son. And, you know, and that to me is like, that's what it's all about. That's what it's all about. The continuation of our people, the continuation of our religion, that nothing that we've gone through should go to waste. You know, and I thought that's really blessing in itself to see.
Amen. Wait a
Modi.
minute. Before you even go there, I have to say that we're all grateful to have you here to help us share our beautiful stories and
Thank
to
you.
encourage us. Thank you. Okay.
No. Just pulled the string at the back of my head.
You're like,
Modi manachnu lach. Try that with me. Modi manachnu lach. Modi manachnu lach. One more time. Modi manachnu lach. For all these gifts, we thank you, God. Modi manachnu lach. Any other moments of gratefulness? Well, I will share that as part of this trip, I flew from Tel Aviv to New York and visited my 89-year-old mother, and then flew to Indianapolis, where I was artist in residence, similar to this weekend, and was able to pray and sing and rejoice with friends of mine. And then I flew to San Diego to be with my 92-year-old father. As my own internist said, I have a feeling you're going to be around for a long time. And that was amazing to be able to share stories and hear stories with my father lives in a senior community. And then I'm very grateful to be able to fly from here to, not from here, I haven't left here yet, from San Diego to here to be with you. And it is really a blessing to be able to do that, to be able to travel, to share stories, to share song with trusted and beloved colleagues and friends, and that indeed is a blessing. Modi manachnu lach. Modi manachnu lach. For all these gifts, we thank you, God. Modi manachnu lach. For all these gifts, we thank you, God. Modi manachnu lach. Before we take a moment for silent prayer, silent thought, a short story. A little boy wanted to meet God. He knew it was a long trip to where God lived, so he packed a suitcase with a bag of potato chips and a 6-pack of root beer and started his journey. When he had gone about 3 blocks, he met an old woman. She was sitting in the park, just staring at some pigeons. The boy sat down next to her and opened his suitcase. He was about to take a drink of the root beer when he noticed that the old lady looked hungry, so he offered her some chips. She gratefully accepted and smiled at him. Her smile was so wonderful that the boy wanted to see it again, so he offered her a root beer, and again she smiled at him. The boy was delighted. They sat there all afternoon eating and smiling, but they never said a word. As the sun began to set, as twilight approached, the boy realized how tired he was. He got up to leave. But before he had gone more than a few steps, he turned around and ran back to the old woman and gave her a hug. And she gave him the biggest smile ever. When the boy opened the door to his own house a short time later, his mother was surprised by the look of joy on his face. She asked him, "Well, what did you do today that made you so happy?" He said, "Well, I had lunch with God." But before his mother could respond, he added, "You know what? God, she has the most beautiful smile I've ever seen." Meanwhile, the old woman, radiant with joy, returned to her home. Her son was stunned by the look of peace on her face, and he asked, "Mom, what did you do today that made you so happy?" She replied, "I ate potato chips in the park with God." However, before her son responded, she said, "You know, he's much younger than I thought he would be." Too often we underestimate the power of a touch, a smile, a kind word, a listening ear, an honest compliment, or the smallest act of caring, all of which we have the potential to turn our life around. People come into our lives for a reason, a season, a year, or a lifetime, but we should embrace them all equally. So have lunch with God and bring chips and bring some root beer. We take a moment for silent prayer. Iule ratson, imre fi vegion libi, lefanecha Adonai, tsuri vegoali. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable unto you, Adonai, Adonai, my rock and my Redeemer. In a moment, we're going to open up the Torah to Parshat Bo, where Moses and Pharaoh encounter each other again, and we are witness to the third of the last of the 10 plagues. But as we are in this middle of this book, Shemot, which is all about names, I wanted to ask you about your names. Who are you named for, and what do you know about them? I was named for my mother's parents, Edward and Sarah, who actually predeceased my mother's grandmother, my great-grandmother. Tonight, when I present my show Shards, you'll get a chance to meet Grandma Eva, who lived in Washington Heights. So I am named Eliyahu Yisrael, which is somewhat of a messianic name. My parents had great hopes for me. It's unusual to name a child Elijah, and it's not a name you wouldn't name a child. There are no Eliyahus in Israel. The only Eliyahus that are in Israel are men who are like 87. So who are you named for? Anybody? Yeah.
Well, this is kind of a different, I was just having a conversation with these two people next to me. It put me back into a difficult place. But, let's see, I was born Patricia Graham Johnson. My mother's family was German, so that Graham Johnson was my father. Johnson Wendy Schinker, which is the name of my first husband, and Garner, the name of my current and always husband. So Patricia, Graham, Johnson, Wendy, Lemley, Schinker, Garner.
Wow, that's like the names they have in Italy. It's like, and what, do you have a Hebrew name?
You know, I did. What was it? We were very active Jews, and then we took about a, I don't know, 3-decade hiatus, and we're back. I don't know. And maybe I should.
Now is the time to have that conversation with us.
That's right, too.
Because part of my name journey is that at a certain point, my beloved late father-in-law helped me find a new Hebrew name for myself, and it was so meaningful. So let's do that.
It's never too late.
I can add another one.
That's right.
Was the name Lemley in relation to the Lemleys from the movie industry in Los Angeles?
I don't know, my father, boy, this is life. My stepfather was, illegitimate, born of an Irish maid who fell in
Wow.
love with a college student in London and brought her over. She thought they were going to get married, but no, so she lived out her life as a prostitute, but had enough money to send my adopted father to a private school, Hill School, in
Wow.
Pennsylvania. So he knew nothing
Oh.
at all about.
Wow.
I'm seeing a Netflix.
I see a series, 6 episodes, and download now before it expires. So.
Well, actually, one of the things I've just started doing is writing some stories.
Yeah, that's great.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Squish Ball Bullhead, which is what my brother used to call me, Squish Ball.
That's what a term of what a term of endearment. Other names, do you know? Yeah.
I was born Sarah Lynn Meadow. Sarah, because of a song, according to legend, according to a song playing in a bookstore, full time. Meadow, the name of a mother who I have never met, never meet, by her choosing. I then became, via adoption, Amanda Rose Wesselo. I later in my life, at 27, reconnected with my biological father. His family name is Pageant. I have no association, but they are my family. I'm married. I'm married into the Dunn-Bernstein family, which is a combination of a hyphenated name that is both of my husband's, his father and mother. That is my children's last name. And I now go through a process of separation from that relationship and am left with what names may be to come.
Mhm.
And do you have a Hebrew name?
Zahara, Abraham,
Zahara, beautiful.
and that was chosen. I honor greatly during my conversion process the fact that we are partners in creation, and it gives me so much hope in my life. And so in reference to the
Beautiful.
Mhm.
aspect of say,
Thank you.
connect deeply with.
Anybody else? Your names?
Yeah, I kind of have to. I'm Eli. I was named for Grandpa Leo,
Mm-hmm.
and what I know about him, he was a craftsman. He was a mystic. All I remember of him is he was this great big man in a hospital bed with tubes sticking out of him. And I was 5 and I was very scared.
Mm.
That's all I remember. But yes, I was named for him. I am Eliyahu Nisim ben Abraham Menachem.
Beautiful.
Eliyahu.
Yeah, Eliyahu. But you don't go by Eliyahu. No.
I heard it.
I will tell you that, so my English name is Evan, which it actually is, and I write it Aleph, Vet, Nun, Sofit, which means a stone, a rock in Hebrew. And I'm in Ulpan, which is, intensive Hebrew instruction. And the teacher says, "Lo, ze lo shem." She says, "It's not a name." She says, "Ze mashahu. V'gam yesh lanu baya gadola." We have a big problem. She says, "Ze nekeva." It's feminine. It's, because Hebrew is the feminine. And she says, "Ze nekeva." ואתה צריך לבקר את המשרד הפנים, the sort of the immigration authority, ואתה צריך לשנות את השם שלך. She says you have to change your name. So, and I said, "No, I'm not." She said, "Well, fine." It's like, so it is unusual when people say, "What's your?" So I'm in the equivalent of Israeli Starbucks, which is Aroma, and they say, "What's your name?" And everybody has like a Starbucks name because they never get it right. So I say, "What's your name?" I say, "It's Evan," and he writes Aleph, Vet, Nun. And then the guy calls up. He says, "I have a latte for Abu." So, which if you take off the bottom half of the nun, it looks like a vav. So I am now Abu. So,
Much more common name.
which is he's the parrot in Aladdin. There's always the monkey, right? So, yes. Any other names? Any other names as we move into the parshat of names? So the other thing, yeah, Michael.
Just in terms of being the new immigrant, my parents were immigrants to America, and so my brother had already been born, Ronnie, he was born in Sweden. My parents came to America, and it's like, we need an American name. We can't just, give them some foreign name. So they asked the nurse at the hospital, "What's a good English name?" He said, "Michael," because everybody's name is Michael. So that's how I got my name. No connection to anyone or anything. It was an attempt to be, to fit in, which is part of that whole immigration story.
Yeah.
Wow.
Either you change your name or you don't. Right?
Do you have? And what about? Do you have a Hebrew name?
Michael.
Michael. Okay.
So then they had the Hebrew connection.
Right.
Which is one
But
of
you do have
the
two
angels.
middle names.
Yeah, but then they gave me two middle names just to make everything more complicated. Tzvi and Shraga.
And we've learned in Israel never to use your middle name because I'm Evan Stewart Kent. My parents thought we were Anglican or something. I don't know. It's a bizarre name for it. My father changed his name. The family name was actually Katz and Ellenson, which is a very, I'm a direct descendant of a very famous, one of the founders of labor Zionism in Israel. I only found that out through genealogy. I'm actually related to Rochelle Nelson and Josh Nelson. We're all Nelsons. Yeah. And my father, with the name, then changed this family name to Katz. But he taught in Alexander Hamilton Vocational High School in the midst of Brooklyn in the 1950s. And when he would walk into the classroom, because his name was Katz, he really couldn't teach because the kids would sit there and meow. So he changed the family name to Kent. But I never discovered this until I was rummaging in our basement, through boxes and stuff, and I found my mother and father's wedding invitation. That was Donald Katz marries Marion Friedman. And I said, "Who are these people?" And then I realized, and it's like, the things that people just don't tell you. So the other thing in this week's Torah portion, because we're doing Torah study before we actually read Torah, is we're coming to the three plagues, the three last plagues, which are hail, cattle disease, and the killing of the firstborn. So we don't have to go into who's experienced hail cattle or the killing. We're not going to go there. But what are some of the challenges that you have faced in your own life, if you're free to share with us, and who was responsible for helping you overcome those challenges, or who has been a major force that we're talking about, that critical event in your life? Who is that person that helped to propel you on the path where you find yourself now?
So,
yeah.
I converted to Judaism in high school.
Okay.
Then my undergrad, I was prayed on by Southern Baptists because I was the only Jew on my college campus.
Wow.
And so I broke and returned to Christianity and was actually pastor for some time. My fiance knew that I considered myself Jewish, even with being a Christian minister, started asking me questions about kashrut and other things, and I was like, well, you can't just take kashrut, you have to this is where I belong. My theology was already closer to Reformed theology than Christian theology. And so on the way back to the car, Lauren looked at me and said, "So you're going back to Judaism, right?" And I said, "Yeah, probably when I retire." Maybe you should think about that. Yeah, so Lauren, my fiance, was a huge force in bringing me home.
Wow.
As we enter our life together, she's just very much that person.
Beautiful story.
And when I returned, going back to your previous question, just for a very brief moment, Rabbi Joseph invited me to choose a third Jewish name. So I am Amior Ariel Chaim Nabet Ruth.
Wow. Beautiful. Anybody else? Somebody that helped you overcome an adversity or an adversity that you faced? Because the Israelites, they're facing great adversity. They're slaves. They eventually, next week they will walk through the Red Sea, and then they start to complain, which is, oh, how unusual that they would be complaining. And what do they complain about? They complain about food. They say, Moses, in Egypt we had watermelon and cucumbers, and here we have nothing. So
Just manna.
Which must be like power bars flying from the sky.
Or really tasty.
Yeah. Anybody else? Any other adversity? So I'll tell you that I always knew I sort of had a pleasant voice as a kid, but I was primarily a violinist. And I still play violin. And I was playing violin for the chamber choir that was traveling through nursing homes on Long Island. And when I wasn't playing for a piece called Christmas in the Straw, which must have been a great choral masterpiece. It was like, the choir teacher said, the choir leader said, well, when you're not playing, why don't you pick a part, so choose a part. And I said, okay, I'll read the tenor line, the music. And as we were singing, Oh Holy Night, or, Chestnuts Roasting on an Open Fire, she turned to a friend of mine, she said, tell him to drop the violin and start singing. And I would have never started to sing as a profession if it weren't for Marilyn Burroughs, for Pat Burroughs, who turned to me and said, you have a gift. It is and you should cultivate that. And and it's unexpected. I mean, I always thought I would end up as a violinist or a dentist, but I was really. So we're going to take out Torah, and we're going to rise, if you're able to. And we begin on page 244. Ein kamocha Elohim Adonai, ve'ein kema'asecha, malchutecha malchut kol olamim, u'memshaltecha b'chol dor v'hador. Adonai melech, Adonai malach, Adonai himloch, le'olam ha'ed. Adonai oz le'amohitein, Adonai yivarech et amo v'shalom, al shlosha devarim, al shlosha devarim, al shlosha devarim, halam, amen, al shlosha devarim, al shlosha devarim, al shlosha devarim, halam, amen. Al haTorah ve'al ha'avodah ve'al gemilut chasadim. Al haTorah ve'al ha'avodah ve'al gemilut chasadim. So instead of reading the Torah on the Torah table, we thought we would actually unroll the Torah. so we can all see where we are. And Cantor Raina is going to chant for us. But before we do that, how far are we from the beginning of Shemot? We're just a few portions, right?
From Shemot?
Yeah, we're just back here.
No, you mean Beshalach.
We can look at, yeah, we can look. So we're in, there are these great Torah portions. So this is the beginning. Every Torah portion is delineated by this space. And the question is, did we lose Bo somewhere along the way?
No, I was just looking. Keep my eye on it.
So here's the end of Genesis, and here's the beginning of Shemot. And we have to wonder, what happens in between this space? Why? It's written that way to show us where the end of one book is, but in our imagination, in our mind's eye, what happens at the end of Genesis and the beginning of Exodus? At the end of Genesis, what happens is Joseph and Jacob are reunited, and the Israelites have Jacob's bones, right? That's the end of, that's later on. Joseph dies. Joseph dies. Joseph and his brothers are reunited. So what happens here? These are what we call liminal spaces. We're neither here nor there. You know, a great example of a liminal space is an airport. Nobody actually stays there intentionally, but it's always a transition. Even a bridge is a liminal space. When you get married, the aisle that you walk up is a liminal space, and then you stand under the chuppah because you're transitioning from one space to another. And then if we move ahead to Bishalach, is this like heavy? Is it?
It's fine.
It's fine.
But are you?
I feel, here, let me move it.
Move that. This is highly unusual, but here we come to Bishalach. And there are only 4 places in the entire Torah where we don't have line after line after line. Here is one of them, which is the Song of the Sea. And all of a sudden, this is where the Israelites will march through the Red Sea. It says, Az Yashir Moshe, B'nei Yisrael, et hashirah, hazot l'Adonai, vayomru le'mor, Ashir l'Adonai, ki ga'oga, sus v'racho, rabah vayam. So all of a sudden, we have this moment in the entire Torah. We have pages and pages, columns and columns of text. And then we get to this. Why? And there's no reason, we don't know the reason, why all of a sudden do we have this delineation of words like this? One is that it's a song, it's a poetry. Poetry is separated in the scroll like that, but what does that symbolize to you? As we come towards, we're a week away from walking through the Red Sea together.
That does look like the seas are parted.
The sea is parting, the words are coming across. Yes, beautiful. Anybody else?
This is where the real changes.
This is where the world changes.
No, this is where the real changes.
The real change.
Marching through the sea is the end of the process of entering the new. This is where it really changes.
It's beautiful.
But I would say it's the beginning, because it looks like, there are a lot of blank spaces. So now is the time for you to fill in those spaces.
Wow, just fill in those spaces. Other people have said that maybe these are the bricks of the pyramids that they built. Could be the waves of the Red Sea that they crossed. We don't know, but we do know that there's other times later on in Deuteronomy that we have this separation of text like this, and it is quite beautiful. It is really, and it actually has a name. It's called the Song, because it is that moment, as you said, that we start to coalesce as a people. So let's.
I'd like to take a picture.
Okay.
I mean, really, this is actually.
You can always have the song with you in your
right.
pocket from now on.
Because I'd like to share this with you.
Isn't that amazing?
So
Come back next Saturday morning and we're going to be reading.
now let's go to Parshat Bo, and we will all do the blessing together. If you want the blessings, they're on page 250. Yam tu kol hakila shel Beit Knesset. We say Baruch Hu Adonai Hamorach natan lanu et Torato, Baruch atah Adonai, noten haTorah. Amen.
Vayomer Adonai el Moshe, bo el Paro, ki ani ichbadti et libo v'et lev avadav leman shiti ototai ele bekirbo uleman tisaper beoznei vincha uven vincha et asher hitalati b'mitzrayim ve'et ototai asher samti bam vidatem ki ani Adonai vayavo Moshe ve'Aharon el Paro vayomru elav ko amar Adonai Elohei ha'ivrim ad matai me'anta le'anot mipanai shalach ami v'yavduni.
Second blessing. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torah emet, v'chayei olam natan b'tocheinu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. With the Torah out, if there is anybody who would like to offer, or like us all to offer together a Misha Berach for healing of body or mind or spirit, if there's a name that you would like to mention at this time, somebody in need of healing would be appropriate. On page 252 as our Misha Berach prayer, actually no, Misha Berach is on page 253, we say, Misha Berach avotenu mikol haracha limotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Misha Berach imotenu mikol haracha lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. On page 256, we return the Torah with the singing of Eitz Chaim Hi. Eitz Chaim Hi, lema'as yikricha, l'tzom lecha, me'ushar, derach elecha, darkei olam, v'chol netivotecha, shalom, hashivenu Adonai, elecha v'nashuva, Kadesh, Kadesh Yameinu, Kadesh Yameinu, Please be seated. In a moment, we're going to recite Kaddish Yatom, Mourner's Kaddish. But before we do, since this is about names and about people who have influenced us, Poet Susan Glickman writes, "They had names like Auntie Bee and Aunt Laura and wore tight corsets. When you put your arms around them, you could feel the wires. They had papery skins, cheeks like moth's wings that trembled when you kissed them. Their husbands were dead, or they were called Sam or Arthur, and they wore hats, even in summer. They smoked cigars that always went out, and they let them go out. The old people had candies in their pockets and Kleenex. They carried pictures of grandchildren and knew all the stories about who was related to whom and why, and remembered them. When I was a child, I was told all the stories again and again, who was related to whom and why, and who died and why, but I always forgot. Years later, I have no one to tell me these stories. I remember the ladies' perfumes, lilac, carnation, and rose. They smelled like sachets. And I remember their arthritic fingers, wedding bands sunk into the flesh. I always imagined they'd have to cut them off. They kept trying to decide whose eyes I had, whose nose, what were my talents. But I didn't listen. But now I want to know. I want to know where I fit in that long line of descendants from the country of the old. This morning we remember
those who have recently passed: David Dietz, George Friedman, Clarence Moriva, Nancy Penkin, Donald V. Young, and all those whose yahrzeits occur at this time. Likewise, if you are honoring a special someone and would like to mention their name now, please do.
It's my father's birthday.
His name?
Conrad Evans, Arthur Evans. Elaine Cavelli.
My father, Jerry Rosenthal.
We draw all of the memories of our dear ones close as we rise for Kaddish Yatom, page 294.
Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei rabah, v'yalmad yivrachu te v'yamlich malchute, v'chayechon of yomechon, v'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael, v'gala v'zman kariv v'yimru amen. Yehei shemei rabah mivarach v'yolam u'me'amaya, yitvarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitala v'yitalal shemei d'kudesha b'richum. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, damiram v'yama v'yimru amen. Yehei shalom rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. Osei shalom b'mromav, hu ya'asei shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru kol yoshvei tevel v'yimru amen. V'yimru, 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 amen. V'yimru, 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 amen. We conclude as we began with the words of Pitchu li Sharei Tzedek, open for me the gates of justice. In a world that sometimes feels unjust and unkind, we as liberal Jews, as Reformed Jews, as all Jews, we hope, work to create a world better for all of us, for all, they'll look at that. Okay. שערי צדק העולם פורח. פתחו לי שערי צדק העולם פורח. Shabbat Shalom, and I hope to see many of you this evening for my one-person show. Actually, it's not one person, but I portray 21 different characters, and a couple of puppets make an appearance. I would be a joy to share my stories and my songs with you this evening. So Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. It'll be right here, 7 o'clock.
7 o'clock.
Yes.
Right.
Yeshkoch, please join us for Kiddush outside. And if you don't mind, you can return your prayer books to the cart.
Thank you. What a nice guitar.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yeshkoch.
Beautiful
Beautiful.
job.
Thank you. Thank you. I always think I know this. It's okay. It's like an imposter syndrome.
Always.
Much, and you bring in
Always,
beautiful sources too.
Sam, thank you so much for doing that.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Writing, mostly writing and more writing.
Writing and writing.
Yeah, mostly doing. Yeah. Yeah.
I forget because the rest of my
You know what, all our friends
my parents are the same.
old. All my friends are 80, except for me. So this one is oh.